Hello. White Knight. Now, the first and most important thing you need to know about this book is that it is a sentimental story from the diary of a dreamer. Now, for the spirit of dreams and delusions and hallucinations, I'm going to delude myself into believing Dostoevsky sitting right next to me. Now, the narrator is such a dreamer to the extent that he starts talking to St. Petersburg. Yes, the city in Russia. And it is a she, because I assume Russian is a gendered language, I think. And he compares her to a girl. A timid, exquisite, beautiful girl. He says, "There is something inexpressibly touching in nature round Petersburg. When at the approach of spring she puts forth all her might, all the powers bestowed upon her by heaven, when she breaks into leaf, decks herself out, and spangles herself with flowers, somehow I cannot help being reminded of a frail, consumptive girl, at whom one sometimes looks with compassion, sometimes with sympathetic love, whom sometimes one simply does not notice, though suddenly in one instant she becomes, as though by chance, inexplicably lovely and exquisite." I don't know about you, but I'm blushing already. Now he also, as he walks around the city, he talks to the buildings, and the buildings talk back to him. That's the kind of person we're dealing with. He has no grasp of reality, it seems. He's not a crazy person, he's just lonely and bored and in his head all the damn time. Now, I bring up this point of being a 21st century reader because the story is written in Russia in the 1800s, where they had different traditions, social norms, different interactions on a day-to-day basis. We didn't even talk to people anymore. I don't talk to people anymore. Surprisingly, the narrator is as lonely and awkward and desperate as any other guy in 2024. So that's very close to heart. But I don't know if anybody else felt this way. The first 10 pages were very painful for me to read because of the narrator. Every time I listen to him, and yes, listen, because I always have this voice in my ear of some anime boy just saying, no girl would ever talk to me. I'm just so lonely and misunderstood. I'm just too timid and shy and... brother. And so, after that, the rest of the book, quite lovely. And on my second reading, I had to rewire my entire brain to just forsake contemporary ideas and just put myself in the shoes of a narrator and imagine myself in Petersburg, Russia, at that time. Now, despite his flaws, he has something that we lack nowadays. This is pertaining to Dostoevsky: authenticity. He gets so much into his character's psyche. It's quite beautiful. I mean, the narrator sometimes goes on and on with vivid descriptions and rants, and he describes it as this. On page 16, "Valves have opened in my head that I must let myself flow in a river of words or I shall choke." Now his companion, the girl Nastinka, she's sometimes confused at his plethora of words, and she asks something that a lot of Dostoevsky readers, I assume, ask often. She says, "You describe it all splendidly, but couldn't you perhaps describe it a little less splendidly?" The girl, I'm talking about Nastinka, when he meets her, she's very sweet and understanding, but at the same time she's naive and gullible, as befits a 17-year-old girl. I apologize, that was actually yesterday. You won't believe what happened. My dog was barking outside, and I go outside, and Dostoevsky's like, "Куда ты идешь? Мы еще не закончили." And so I see this young, lovely girl walking her puppy, and my dog is barking at her. I was like, "I apologize, is he bothering you? Let me just grab him real quick." And Dostoevsky next to me is like, "That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the GOAT!" Told him, "Get the fuck back inside." "Yes, you did. Yes, you did." Oh, anyways, where was I? 17-year-old Nastinka. Look, I'll give you a pass. Actually, no, I'm not gonna give you a pass. There's something I need to get off my chest first. bothered me. It's page 36. Wonderful. I began comforting her, the narrator, seeking for reasons for his not coming, advancing various arguments, proofs. No one could have been easier to deceive than she was at that moment. Look, I don't know, man. I don't know. The narrator is actually portrayed as sweet and kind. However, the distress of Nastenka is working in his favor. While Nastenka, on the other hand, she's portrayed as a bit of a villain. But we'll get to that towards the end. Listen, I'm a sympathetic, understanding person too. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but I still have a bone to pick with the narrator. Because, intentionally or not, he's just dumping the weight of the world onto Nastenka all the damn time. What I mean by that, he hits her with a good old trope. Maybe it's not accurate to say good old, maybe he's the founding father, but he hits her with the, you can fix me, and she eats it all up. What the f***? Now at this point the narrator goes on and on about his loneliness, his dreaminess, his state of mind, you know, the whole package. And the narrator is over the moon because she just lets him. Get a load of this guy. Page 21. Oh, Nastenka, Nastenka, do you know how far you have reconciled me to myself? Do you know now that I shall not think so ill of myself as I have at some moments? Do you know that maybe I shall leave off grieving over the crime and sin of my life, for such a life is a crime and a sin. And do not imagine that I have been exaggerating anything. For goodness sake, don't think of that, Nastenka. For at times such misery comes over me, such misery, because it begins to seem to me that at such times I am incapable of beginning a life in real life, because it has seemed to me that I have lost all touch, all instinct for the actual, the real, because at last I have cursed myself, because after my fantastic nights I have moments of returning sobriety. It's written right here! So at this point in the story, Dostoevsky just heightening the tension, the delirium, the intensity of feelings. And the narrator describes it perfectly on page 47. He says, as we talked like this, we walked along in a sort of delirium, a sort of intoxication, as though we did not know what was happening to us. They're both out of their mind at this moment, and Dostoevsky is just building and building and building and preparing us for the ending that's going to hit like a truck. But before that, let me just recap some of my favorite moments, as this is the quintessential friend zone story after all. Where do we even start? Nastenka says, if you ever fall in love with someone, I wish you happiness with her. We got, why isn't he you? Why isn't he like you? He is not as good as you, though. I love him more than you. Do you know why I'm so glad? Do you know why I like you so much today? I like you because you have not fallen in love with me. And my personal favorite, goodness, what a friend you are. And now, my friends, we climax. A guy walks up. He calls out, Nastenka! And the narrator describes this moment. My God, how she cried out, how she started, how she tore herself out of my arms and rushed to meet him. I stood and looked at them, utterly crushed. But she had hardly given him her hand, had hardly flung herself into his arms, when she turned to me again, was beside me again in a flash, and before I knew where I was, she threw both her arms around my neck and gave me a warm, tender kiss. Then, without saying a word to me, she rushed back to him, took his hand, and drew him after her. I stood a long time, looking after them, and at last the two vanished from my sight. Poor guy. That's all I have to say. Actually, there's one more thing I need to do. الو مرحبا، شو الوضع؟
أهلا خير، شو الوضع؟
اسمع، تعمل لي معروفية؟
أكيد.
ليك بتعرف هاي الدقة بفيلم فايت كلاب ويرز ماي مايند بقولوا له.
بعرفها.
اسمع، بينفع تدق لي اياها على البيانو وتبعت لي اياها؟
بدقة وببعت لك اياها.
تسلم تسلم، شكرا، يلا باي.
على خير.